All right. Hello. My name is Connor Anderson. I have chosen to do my presentation today on AI and deepfakes. I think this is a really important topic, especially today. We're on our devices, on social media. We consume media at an absolutely unprecedented rate. And I feel like a lot of people don't understand the gravity of misinformation and the altering and doctoring of what you see online every day. Um, so I think it's something that more people should be aware of and take into consideration when they're browsing Facebook, browsing Twitter, looking at all these things, and getting ideas. It really is going to impact our future in a pretty significant way. So let's get into what they are. AI image generation and deepfakes are similar but different, and understanding that difference is pretty important. So AI image generation utilizes, as it states in the name, artificial intelligence. It trains itself on a large and complex data set to associate typically words with images. And it utilizes the process of stable diffusion in order to make this happen. So it's oftentimes just creating something from nothing. Though it does know how like what words are, it has like an idea of like what a cow is or like what a car is, stuff like that. The better the data set, usually the better the product. Um, and that's just generally speaking. And this the same is also true for deepfakes. Deepfakes are algorithmic, but also there is a now becoming more of an artificial intelligence component or alternative where existing video footage is doctored and altered, typically where a face is completely wiped and replaced, and it can make the person in the video look like someone completely different, and be saying and moving in different ways. Um, and just like AI image generation, deepfakes require a vast amount of data, but particularly data of higher quality. You need usually tens of thousands of pictures of a person in various different lighting types in order to produce a convincing deepfake. It's a lot more intensive, both resources on the computer you're using, the machine, but also in that sort of barrier to entry, which is why typically. But let's take a step back and go into the early AI image generation. So, stable diffusion, like I mentioned in the previous slide, it's a relatively new technology, and it's still being worked on and perfected. Um, it's really powerful and good at what it does, but it's interesting to take a look back and see sort of like how quickly it's gotten so good. um, the first AI generated image was in the year 1960. And I think this photo is really interesting because AIs will typically try and copy different art styles. Like when you can feed it information and say like make this, I don't know, car or person look like they were animated by like a Disney Pixar like animator or something like that. And it's a really interesting like visual style. I don't know. I think this it's really fascinating. And so as the hardware has evolved, it's really paved the way for these for AI to grow and evolve alongside it. And it's interesting to see how sort of rough this sort of this technology was really like just a decade ago. Like generating faces and things from nothing didn't really look too good. And as the years go on, it got better and better and better until it feels like now there's really no limit to it. So moving on to next slide, the AI image generation of today is crazy. Just to put it like in the most simplest and like informal terms, it's wild what you can do with this technology now. In the last year alone, you know, everyone's been talking about AI. It's exploded in popularity in like, you know, media perception and all that. But it's mostly because of the leaps made by GPT-3 that has caused a lot of the hype around it. And a lot of algorithms and other players are starting to get in here and try and get a slice of this AI pie. It's really becoming a tremendous thing. And so it's increasingly, you know, what's good about this is that, you know, it's accessible, it's getting really good. But you know, one of the drawbacks is that the better it gets, the harder it is to distinguish reality from AI. So I have a couple of images here. You know, you can take a wild guess which one you think is and isn't, you know, AI generated. I ran this by a couple of people to see what they thought. So just take a second. You know, these all three are AI generated, which like it's insane. I generated the two on the right, the one on the right and the one on the left, by feeding it like really simple instructions. I think the one on the left was Depression era breadline 1930s or something like that, like really really simple. And the one on the right was, I think it was just New York City V-Day, Victory Day 1945. You know, the one in the center I didn't create. I don't know who it's based off of or what the purpose of was it or for was it, but it absolutely broke my brain looking at this, like trying to find imperfections or like any sort of mistake. There used to be really telltale signs of an AI generated person with like fingers. It used to not get fingers right, but recently in the last couple of months, you can get really good looking like people, like hands, body parts. It all looks real. And so this image, like, it kind of scares me, to be honest. This one in the middle really scares me. And then moving on to, you know, the future of AI image generation, it's only going to get better. And you can, you know, look at that a couple of different ways. I have these two images here. I found both of these. The one on the left isn't that convincing, but it kind of reminds me of, you know, what when we look at like current conflicts going on across the world, you know, this sort of content will be influencing how we think and feel about certain situations, right? This can be used as a tool of propaganda. It can be used to make you feel sympathy or aggression towards one side or another in a conflict. And this one with President Trump actually got me. I saw this one on Twitter like a few months ago when all the trial stuff was going on, and it really like it got me. It totally like I was convinced that he got arrested. And there's a couple of images generated by the same person, and you can spot a few imperfections when you really look at it. But this one in particular, like there's nothing wrong. Like there's nothing wrong with this image. They have like in terms of like visually, you can't really pick out any detail that's like, oh yeah, this is an AI generated image. It just looks really convincing and really really good. I'm sorry, my cat has jumped up on my lap and he's causing some mayhem right now. So I apologize if you see me like moving down or like looking around. He's just jumping about. I'm sorry about that. So now let's move on to deepfakes. Deepfakes have been around for a good bit, but they really, really took off in early 2014 with the GAN, the Generative Adversarial Networks. A lot of this was spearheaded and promoted with NVIDIA. NVIDIA worked with this group to help push along the technology and tackle a hurdle that no one could really solve at the time. And there was a lot of concern over deepfakes because even back then, like when they looked really bad, because they've come a long way. There are some really old deepfakes that look just terrible. there was a lot of concern and reasonable concern that this sort of thing can be very dangerous. Early on, it was used for like pornographic reasons. Nefarious uses were some of the first things that people were really trying to do with this technology. And so I think it's an important topic to be well versed in now that this sort of thing is just growing and it's not going away. Basically, is what I'm trying to say. So this is a example of a deep fake that I actually really this one also blew me away the first time I saw it. So if you're familiar with the Disney show The Mandalorian, there is an actor from the original Star Wars movies. His name is Mark Hamill. He's kind of an old guy now, but these images are deep fakes of him that make him look how he was in the movies, in the original movies, to keep his character accurate to the time period that the show is taking place. So he's an old guy. He doesn't look anywhere near like this, and CGI and makeup can only take it so far, to the point where they developed a deep fake data set for the actor. And I believe this top link goes to, so the bottom link is the original clip. They're timestamped, so if you don't want to watch the full thing, the link will take you like exactly to the moment in the show where it like shows off the deepfake. It's so convincing. It's so good. It looks really, really strong. And the other link is a YouTube channel, really popular YouTube channel, Corridor Digital. They do all sorts of in-house VFX. They break down a lot of stuff. They're really, really solid filmmakers, and they're, I would say, relatively advanced, but they're no movie studio, and they do something really cool where they do their own take on the whole like deep fake. They recreate the scene. The timestamp will take you right there to it. It's really impressive what a team of like a dedicated team of creators can come really close to production level, like Disney buku bucks, like millions and millions of dollars poured into the show. They can come pretty damn close, and it looks really solid. So it just kind of shows how the divide between like the industry, like Hollywood, these big movie studios with tons of money, and YouTube creators who admittedly have solid budget to work with as well. That gap is just it's getting smaller and smaller as the technology gets better. And what I love about them is that they advocate for the freedom and openness to understand how this sort of stuff works and get it in the hands of everybody. So that's just a little side note, but it's an interesting watch because these guys actually really introduced me to the concept. Yeah, they introduced me to the concept of deepfakes, and they dive really deep and show you like really how it works, and how it's not as simple as just like, oh yeah, click a button and it works the same way that, or the way that we perceive AI to work now. So taking a look at the future, where the future of deepfakes, it's the same with AI. Really, the consequences are pretty far-reaching, and it's kind of hard to see what where it can go. I mean, the ceiling for this sort of stuff is really high. I have a clip here of on the right here. This is a deepfaked video of Putin from, about a year ago, about like a year and a half ago, where right when the Ukraine war started, there was a video of him saying like, "Oh, we surrender" or something like that, and it's relatively convincing. It's his own face over his own body in the video, but his mouth is moving a different way, and he's saying something completely different. So that's a combination of like deepfake technology, like replacing the face, and also a voice generator mimicking his voice, putting words in his mouth, essentially. And this clip here on the left is, the image here on the left. I could toss the clip in here too. I don't have the link in here, but I could definitely toss it in. It's an interesting watch. It looks like, and this fooled me the first time I saw it, which is why I'm putting it in here. It looks like Biden was like deepfaked, but it turned, and this is like a video released by the White House. And at first, I was so convinced that like he, because he just everything about the image looks weird. Like his eyes look different, his like facial structure looks a little weird. I the more I dive into it, it's tougher to believe that they went through the process of doing the whole deep fake, all just to say something relatively quick. He's only talking for like a few minutes. But it's one of those things where like the line is so blurred, and nowadays you really can't be too careful when looking at videos put out even by our government. Like this was a huge like debate or like scandal going around. Did the president, the office of the president, just release a deep fake? Like it's it's I don't really know what else to say. It's scary. It's kind of scary to have to think like this. And I think it's important that we're literate in these sorts of these topics, so we're not being confused and tricked by our own governments and by other governments or people pretending to be the government. Like it's a very slippery slope. So why now? Why are we all stuck on this roller coaster together? This is another image that I've generated messing around with AI image generation. So much fun. Highly recommend it. Anyway, it's a hot topic. It's exploded in the mainstream. It feels very magical, right? Like when you first hear about it and you try out ChatGPT, it's mesmerizing. It really is. Like there's nothing like it. And it makes sense that it's this big mainstream topic. And really, this has happened because of the huge leap in progress in such a relatively short amount of time. Like we see big technological leaps in the last 20 years, getting shorter and shorter lengthwise. They're happening sooner and sooner, and I think that's a big part of the reason why people care about it, because it's good now, and it didn't used to be this good. And on top of that, the accessibility, it's so you can just pull it up on a web browser. You don't need a supercomputer. You don't need like a several $1,000 high powered machine. It's the barrier to enter. The barrier to enter is never been lower. And the use cases there's finally like for ChatGPT, like there's a use case for all sorts of practical applications. Like, hey, check this code for me. Can you rephrase this so I don't sound so mean? Like there's people are finding more use case, and it's becoming very practical. AI image generation for things like thumbnails for projects. I could see myself using, I actually never thought of even using AI image generation for slides and presentations until I did this presentation. Like not having to go sift through like stock images and have the watermark. You can just create the stock image, and it could be however you want it. Like it's the freedom and use case is insane. I think that's a really big factor of why it's blown up and become really popular. So let's get into some of the challenges and the implications. This is kind of just a brain dump of all of the possible challenges that we could be facing from it. I think some are relatively more important than others. Excuse me. Obviously, misinformation is super prevalent as is without AI. But misleading advertising, it can be that's definitely a possibility. Advertisers wanting to cut costs, cut corners, and potentially mislead customers. I think it's a big problem. Propaganda, like I mentioned, go hand in hand with elections, and our perception of our elected officials, our leaders, our governments. Propaganda created by a political party or by a country wishing to do harm to another. I think this sort of thing is just gonna make it all that much more easy to get in and do this sort of thing. education. We're seeing it now at UAlbany, the AI, like the reverse AI detection software. And it's I mentioned this in the next slide. It's kind of playing catch up. You can really run circles around the AI detection tool that the school uses, and a lot of them too. They're not really there yet. Um, but this can affect how people learn, and it's the authenticity of students' work is coming into question now, and that's not just doesn't have much to do with deepfakes, per se, but with AI, it's authenticity, and the question of did you do this is it's becoming more of a thing now than I think it was before, for sure. um, so yeah, the detection just really uh, needs to get there. It has to get better. We have to have more reliable ways of detecting, or suggesting the idea of an image that has been created by AI, or a video that's been deepfaked. There's slim to none, or sorry, there's almost no um, legislation around this sort of thing. It's kind of in the Wild West realm of, like, people are still figuring out what it is and deciding how to feel about it. Like, deepfakes have been totally banned off of Facebook, and that was mostly to avoid misinformation regarding the 2020 election. So deepfakes were totally banned off the platform. But then again, it begs the question: when does it get so good that you don't know that it's a deepfake, right? It could be banned. It could be, they could say, oh, you can't do that, but you may not know that there's deepfakes, circling the site as is. And I think this is a major, major problem for intelligence agencies to tackle, because when they're dealing with propaganda, and they're dealing with, you know, altered videos of elected officials, leaders, you know, that can really impact the decision making, from the top down. That can be the difference between whether, two countries go to war. This could be the difference between, one country, maybe falsely or under false pretenses entering into some sort of agreement with another, or, really the ceiling, like I said before, is just so high, in the implications. Um, and really, another big issue is, damage control. You can't, a lot of times you can't walk back the damage that's been done. Especially in the, social media realm, when someone's convinced of something, and this is true in real life, but when someone's convinced of something, it's really hard to change their minds. So if they've been, influenced by AI misinformation, a deepfake video, it can be really hard to bring that to bring that out, unless you can show the proof, like, oh yeah, this is, AI generated, or this is a deep fake. You can clear, like, it's hard to walk that back once someone's already seen it. They may not be willing to, and receptive to hear that they've been duped. Like, no one wants to be told that they were, they believed a lie, right? But that's definitely a big challenge. You can't really just undo physical damage that happens either. If there are political calls to violence, if there's, like, actions that are being, calls to action, like, that sort of stuff, you can't really undo. You can't walk that back. And another issue that's sort of in the same vein, but kind of off topic, I'm realizing now, humans being replaced. So if you see a lot of these AI image generations, like I mentioned before, they can be done in certain styles, like, like the Pixar example. You know, people are worried, artists particularly are worried that, this sort of thing can sort of phase them out and replace them in a lot of ways, right? Like, why would you want to pay someone to create YouTube thumbnails when you can just, type in 3 sentences and you got the same thing. So that's a really tricky situation. There are a lot of challenges that are still really up in the air. Like, there's no solution or clear cut solution to these issues as of yet. And I'm sure as as the issue becomes more prevalent in people's minds and we think about it more, I'm sure some of these will begin to solve themselves, but it's really tough to say right now. So I think the biggest thing to look towards the future when conquering this issue, the our methods for detecting, this sort of content need to get better. Full stop. That's really one of the biggest things that's going to cause damage is not being able to tell that what's being created, how it's being created, where it's coming from. And the detection software is it's a I think it's a big part, and it's one of those things that's always going to be a little bit behind the technology itself. It's just going to be a little bit behind. It's the same way government is always like 10 years behind technology. They just the regulations, it takes time for people to understand that sort of stuff and to come up with good ways of countering it and getting around it. So I think platforms establishing their stance on it, their take is important, because that'll set the precedent for lawmakers and what people are used to, right? Like if you're used to AI or deepfakes, I guess, being like this taboo thing, if that's what you're used to on a lot of your platforms, that'll become true over time. And I think the public needs to be aware. People just have to, it's tough to articulate really how serious this issue is and will become. But I think if people are a little bit more aware, they're a little bit more skeptical. I know after I've done all this image generation, everything I've been looking at, like is that AI generated? Is that is that real? You really got to start second guessing things a lot more, and that's kind of a shame. That's kind of sad, but it's the reality that we're living in. So I think if the public is a little bit more aware, we're more cognizant of the issues and that this is a thing. This is stuff you will encounter. I think that'll be a good step to solving some of these problems. And I think with time, our thresholds for authenticity are going to be a little bit higher, and they're going to I think once AI becomes way more prevalent and deepfakes become so much more convincing, we're going to want a higher stand. We're going to want to hold things to a higher standard of authenticity, and that's just a prediction. I just kind of have a feeling like that'll sort of be the next logical step of like, how do we make sure that what we're looking at hasn't been doctored? And I don't have an answer for that. Truthfully, I don't really know how we'll accomplish that. But yeah, so that's about all I got. I really enjoyed this project. I enjoyed diving deeper into this topic. It's something I'm relatively confident and familiar with, but I think this is a big issue for sure, and I'm really glad I got this opportunity. So thank you very much.